if you need let's say a megawatt of power, then you have to have 15% more in capacity to provide that, to ensure if there are emergencies that you don't take everybody down. We pay for that. We pay the city of Odessa a little over $77,000 in 2009 to cover the capacity that you have, the 5 megawatts that we're sitting out there. Every month, we took your capacity, we multiplied it by about $1,100 and some odd dollars, $1,700, and that was a credit against your monthly bill. That is likely to, well, that will go away once this new rule is in place, because your unit, assuming it's an emergency-only unit. Now, if you transition it over to a general unit, capacity credits can be available. Couple of things to keep in the back of your mind. The rate for capacity credits goes down 5% for the next 2 years. That's a decision made by the MOPEP board, a board that your city sits on. And the need for capacity reserve, as I said, this is a FERC rule, so it continues as long as MUC and MOPEP are providing power. Sources and rates are subject to regular review by the MOPEP board. So essentially, what Uncle Sam has done, what the EPA has done, is said large diesel engines are going to have more strict emission controls if they are going to be used on a regular basis. If they're only to be used for emergency, then we're not going to require this this level of restriction, this level of control. And with that, I will turn to my colleague, who will talk about cost.
Cost and hardware. Thank you, Floyd. I'm Lincoln Duncan from BHMG. We provide services for your electric distribution system power plant. Earlier this evening, I put a couple, three items in your package. One is a fact sheet that was actually off a EPA website. You can see what benefit we expect to receive by enacting this regulation. And I can tell you that the joint action agencies in Missouri and Illinois lobbied hard to get plants such as yours exempt from this rule. We consider that they typically operate only when there's an emergency, but the folks in Washington don't see it that way. There's another handout from Johnson Matthey, and this is a typical what they call oxidation catalyst. This gets installed in the exhaust stream between the engine and the silencer or the muffler, and it converts CO to CO2. And for this reaction to take place, you have to have a temperature of 450 to 1300 and some degrees. Instrumentation has to be installed to monitor that. Floyd mentioned the continuous monitoring, and that's what the government requires us to do, is to make sure that we're maintaining adequate temperature and a certain pressure drop or maximum pressure drop so that we know we're getting our pollutants converted to a less hazardous or obnoxious product. Question, Karen? You have a SCADA system. The instrumentation can be tapped into it, or you can buy a standalone where you can generate your annual reports. In general, there's no latitude on that. The regulations require us to do emissions testing upon installation. Floyd mentioned the limit of 23 parts per million. You can't get there. That's just, it won't happen. But testing that we're aware of has confirmed that you can reach the 70 to 80% reduction of the CO. So you'll have to do a test before you perform the installation, and then you'll have to have a test, emissions test afterwards to confirm that you've got the 70% reduction. Then periodically, every 3 to 5 years, you're going to have an emissions company come in, recertify that. In the interim, they're assuming that if your instrumentation is recording properly, you're getting proper, reached the proper temperature, and the unit's not plugged up, which is confirmed by the pressure drop, that you'll meet the requirements. There's been some studies done by the joint action agencies as to what estimated costs are on your types and sizes of engines, and budgetary numbers, what they call common cost, which is generating construction permits, your emissions testing, and so on, range from $35,000 to $70,000 for a facility. Per engine cost varies by the size, horsepower of the engine, and they've identified a range of $80,000 to $185,000 for engines typical of the size that you have at the power plant. And the driving cost of that is primarily going to be the OxyCat and the documentation that's required to go with that. The filing with DNR, emissions testing, and subsequent paperwork. So to get a good budgetary number for your plant, someone will need to come in, get data on the specific engines, see what type of room for the installation we have inside the plant, and really look at it in a site-specific situation. And that is to maintain this in the general use category where you're going to continue to get your capacity payments. So there's fuel for thought. Quite often we end up coming back and talking about this further in a work session, maybe after we've had time to get particulars for your plant. But lead time on equipment right now is running about 8 weeks. But this is a nationwide rule, so it's not something that can necessarily be postponed until the latter part of 2012 and expect that we're all going to get underneath the deadline of the spring of 2013. I don't know exactly what the requirements are or how our contracts are written, but this is probably something that the pool would want us to do in the fall, because we don't want the availability for peak summer demand. So you're looking at a window probably October through April or so to perform the maintenance.
We're here to answer questions.
Yeah, Floyd, our last conversation you and I had, you were telling me about new cities joining the pool, and a lot of those cities are non-generating cities.
That's correct.
And you just mentioned we got $77,000 last year credit for this plant. How's that going to weigh out against what it's going to cost us to make this plant in compliance to the new rule?
Well, depending on how many join and when they join, because they too have a 3-year window, one would expect that the demand for capacity credits will go up as non-generating cities come online or join us. Frankly, these cities range from very, very small, which will add virtually no capacity demands, to frankly some fairly large ones. And so it's very difficult to project that impact, because